Okay, are we ready? Good afternoon everyone, welcome to the Education Decision Meeting. I'm Hannah Hockaday, the Cabinet Member for Education, and I'll ask members and officers to introduce themselves, and if you can use the microphone please.
Hi, I'm Councillor Susie Horton. I'm the Lib Dem Education Spokesperson. Thank you.
Hello, Alison Jeffrey, Director, Children, Families, Education.
Bev Pennicott, Interim Finance Manager for Children and Families and Education.
Yeah, Mike Stoneman, I'm Deputy Director of Children, Families and Education.
Caroline Corcoran, Head of Sufficiency, Participation and Resources in Education.
I'm Lisa Gallagher, Local Democracy Officer.
I think Alison, you can turn your one off. Sorry. That's okay. Okay, so it's just a bit of housekeeping and safety information. So if there's a continuous fire alarm, please evacuate the room and public gallery by the stairwells. Do not attempt to use the lifts, and please assemble at the Queen Victoria statue in front of the civic offices. And I need to draw everyone's attention to the fact that the meeting will be live streamed from a camera at a fixed location at the back of the meeting room, and the recording will be on the Council's website. Members of the public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding that neither disrupts the meeting nor records those stating explicitly that they do not wish to be recorded. May I ask to use everyone, I've already asked you to use the microphones. Okay, so the meeting for today, we've got 2 items on the agenda. There are no apologies for absence. Susie, do you have any declaration of interest?
No, just my normal one of being Governor at Craneswater.
Lovely, thank you. So item 3 is the school funding arrangements for 2018-19. So that's over to you, Beverly, please.
Thank you very much. Can I just start by saying we've had some very late information from DFE, so I'll come on to it at the end of this report if I may, but we have an additional recommendation to make a bit later on. So the purpose of this report is really, it's the final of a series of reports that have come to both yourself and to Schools Forum as we work through the implications of the funding available and the schools' budgets and the impact of the working towards the national funding formula for schools. So this is the final recommendation, if you like. So we would like to seek your approval to submitting the authority pro forma tool to DFE on Friday, which we may not now be able to do, and also inform you about the initial determination of the school's budget. If I come back to the recommendations at the end and we work through the paper as we go. As I said, we've spoken about a lot of this stuff already and had approvals and endorsements. So, for example, we've looked at our proposals for what the funding formula unit values should be, and we agreed which unit values should be amended in the case of affordability if we needed to change something to make sure that we fit the funding available to us. You've agreed to retain the reception uplift factor for primary schools, and we set out our initial unit values which were agreed. We've also looked at dedelegation of budgets from schools, and for licences we've looked at 2 minimum funding guarantee disapplication requests which have already gone. We've looked at the growth criteria, which we have approved criteria for now, and we've looked at carrying forward balances from last year into this year and proposals for the same for next year. You've already noted that we're not proposing to make any changes to high needs place numbers, and also for the early years funding formula. So that brings us up to date. The context at the moment is basically, whilst most of the DSG continues to be within affordability, the pressures on the high needs area continue to grow, and they add further pressures to the funding available. And that's particularly on the out-of-city placements, which tend to be very high cost. And also, we've noticed this year, particularly the Element 3 top-up funding, which is payable to mainstream schools for children with special needs in mainstream. That seems to have grown considerably this year. We don't expect that the financial pressures will reduce at all, so I think they will continue to grow into next year. With that in mind, the authority has been undertaking a review of the SEND provision with Southampton. That's due to be published in March, and we'll bring a report back here next month to let you know what's going on with that. We have made, when we've been setting the budget, we have made allowance for the additional costs of the additional pressures and things that we expect, but obviously they are all estimates at this stage, so we don't know if we've made sufficient allowance, and it's always necessary to closely monitor those budgets. If we move on to the DSG, we've had our final allocation now. So we've used the budgets that we've got to make sure that we can afford our requirements. We've had to use about £400,000 this year to cover the additional costs in the high needs budget, and we'll come on to that later. But normally we try to set a budget within the DSG, but this year it hasn't been possible. If you look at the table at 5.4, it shows you how our funding has been allocated. There's an indicative budget that we received back in October, the provisional funding that we've now had, which was in the middle of December, and you can see in most cases each area has gone up, and that's in the main due to the fact that we've had more pupils, because the majority of DSG is pupil-led. The problem area was, again, the high needs block, because our funding actually reduced there. And we believe, although it hasn't been confirmed, that's because that there were two different methods of calculation between the original estimate and the revised final allocation, but DFE haven't confirmed that at this time. But that did obviously add to the pressure. If we talk about the mainstream funding formula now, we agreed the outline funding formula in December, and we agreed the areas that we thought that we might change in order to make it affordable. And we've got a final proposed pro forma, which is available at Appendix 7, and this is what we will normally send to DFE. Obviously there will now be, well not obviously, but there may well now be some changes to that, which we'll come on to right at the end. But that is normally what we would be asking you to approve. The changes that we've made to the funding formula since we last spoke are the rates. That they change when schools become academies, their rates reduce, and there's also been some changes in rateable value. Actually, the change from mainstream to academies last year actually resulted in a decrease in funding of 291,000, which has been recycled into the funding formula, so that's available for all schools now. As we spoke last time, we've now removed the cap on the financial cap on budget shares. So if a school is due to gain through the reallocation of the formula, they are now getting the full benefit of that gain, which is good news for them. With the secondary schools, we looked at the funding available. We had more funding with more pupils, but also more funding than we were expecting in the mainstream side. And whilst we were planning to go with a controlled gradual move towards NFF, the two of the three secondary schools who responded to the consultation asked if they could go to the NFF straight away. Now, for secondary schools, that's actually quite a good thing. For the primaries, it's a very mixed bag. But when we'd done all of our modelling, actually we discovered that we identified that it is affordable for the secondary schools to go directly to NFF, which is what we are recommending. And the Appendix 4 shows the rates formula. Primary schools next. Going straight to the NFF wasn't a good news for them, because particularly our most deprived primary schools will be losing significantly, because we put money into particularly into the more deprived areas, as noted by IDACI. So by removing the cap, actually 20 primary schools have started to see the increases that they will get, so they should be quite pleased with that. But we've still got 11 schools receiving protection of up to £50,000, so for a primary school that's still quite a lot of protection. So we're still anxious to keep the protection as far as we can for our primary schools. So we're proposing, therefore, to keep the phase 2 consultation values that we went out to schools with. We didn't have any negative responses from the primary schools who said let's go straight to NFF. It was only the secondaries who wanted to go, so I think the gradual transition would be our preferred option. The growth fund is in the pro forma at £342,600. That should be enough funding to support 12 schools who we believe it's 12 at the moment, but where we're asking them to increase their PAN in order to cope with additional pupils in the city, and that will help to support them through that first 7 months or a year if they're academies of having the additional pupils. We do need to just make we have made one further disapplication request to the EFA for minimum funding guarantee, and that's for the University Technical College. And again, it's a kind of geeky thing, but as we go to NFF, the secondary lump sum was considerably higher than the NFF lump sum, and the protection that would afford for the University Technical College, the minimum funding guarantee protects for significant reductions in lump sum, and it would protect the University Technical College by something like £30,000 whilst they're growing, and as they grow and their pupil numbers grow, actually that £30,000 would grow as well, which is contrary to the intention of MFG, which is to reduce or rather to protect losses, not to increase. So we have put that through as a request to disapply. We haven't yet had a response. Central Schools Services block next. It's a very small block. It's about £780,000. There isn't very much in it or to explain. We've got a schools forum budget there and a budget for the retained duties. We're planning to keep those the same as last year. The only thing that is likely to change in there significantly is the admissions budget, and that's really in response to DFE recognising the pressures that have been on admissions services who haven't been allowed to increase their budget from the DSG since 2012. So there is a bit more funding available for that, and that's where we're putting the additional funding within the Central School Services block. We will also fund the single national licence for all schools that DFE negotiate centrally, and that's going to be about £115,000. Moving on to early years, there's very little to say there. DFE have confirmed that the DSG hourly rates will remain the same at £4.69 for 3 and 4 year olds and £5.43 for 2 year olds. The table at 8.1 shows how that is made up and how we allocate that money to our nursery settings, which is exactly the same as last year. On to the high needs. As I said earlier, we have seen additional costs, and that's generally due to the Element 3 top-up in mainstream schools, the out-of-city places I talked about earlier. Also, we are seeing Element 3 band creep for special schools, where we're noticing that pupils are actually sort of going up through the bands, which is obviously an additional pressure on the budget. All in all, we think that's about £413,000 that is not able to be funded from within the high needs block. Clearly, going forward, that's not a sustainable position because we only have the DSG as a source of funding, so we have to be able to fund everything that's required out of it. So whilst we can cover the shortfall in 2018-19 from funds that we've brought forward in the DSG, that's not a sustainable way of going forward. So we will have to look at how those costs can be contained within the DSG. And there are a couple of suggestions there which say we could potentially remove or reduce the outreach funding for the PENSEP, or review the Element 3 top-up for a variety of settings. But that's obviously that's an education strategy that will have to be considered over the next term or so. If we talk about the Element 3, no changes are proposed at the moment. But the proposed rates are all shown at Appendix 5, which has them. There is no change from last year, but they are all there for the different different bands and different settings. Staying with the high needs, it's just worth noting that Mary Rose has got a highly exceptional top-up band, and Mary Rose have indicated that their Albert Annex is not affordable in its current organisation. So there is the school and the local authority are working together at the moment to look at how that can go forwards, and there'll be a further report to you in the February meeting. In the mainstream schools, as I said, the costs have gone up. Average cost per pupil has increased by about £600 in the last year for schools, children with special needs in mainstream schools, and also the number has increased. The number of education, health and care plans has increased from 325 in 2016-17 to 363, so it's both sides. And therefore we think that will exceed the budget as well. The outer city is about £149,000 we think is going to overspend, and again actions are being taken to try to keep this within the budget and to try and remodel some of the in-city provision, which hopefully would stop children having to go out to expensive placements. Post-16, we saw quite an increase in that in the last year or so, but actually those numbers seems to have stabilised a bit now, and our budgeted Element 3 top-up is actually expected to reduce a little bit over the next year. Taking all of that into account and all of those bits of bad news and pressures, we are currently modelling, if we go to section 10 now, we're currently expecting that our carry forward DSG from 17-18 into 18-19 will be in the region of £3.1 million. As we've discussed, any carry forward balance, it's a one-off pot of money, so should only really be used to support one-off expenditure. And we do have some commitments already from that £3.1 million. We are expecting the DSG to fund the deficit balance on the Harbour School when that transfers to academy status in the summer, and we expect that will be in the region of £800,000 to £1 million. There's a school-specific contingency within that overall balance of £132,000, which is available to mainstream schools and converting schools and so on. So we obviously need to keep that back. And for this year only, we are proposing that we fund the high needs pressures from that carry forward, which will bring us down, we think, from about £3.1 million to £1.5 million, which is a significant reduction of balances and a little bit tight, really. Right, that's a run through the report, which I realise is very long and convoluted. Now I'd like to just update you on the latest piece of news, which also will add a recommendation. On Friday afternoon, DFE advised us that there was an error in the data set and the free school meals figures for many of our pupils was potentially wrong. So we have rerun the modelling with the new data set, and some of the pupils who we thought were qualifying for free school meals are now not qualifying for free school meals. It's not significant to individual schools, but overall it means we've got about £59,000 more than we thought we had, because we would normally seek to allocate all of the funding to schools, but now we've got a little bit more left over. So we have some choices. Actually, maybe I'll give you this recommendation first, if I may. So we have some choices of what we might do with this £59,000. We could increase the primary, bearing in mind that we've already got secondary on the National Fair funding rates, so we wouldn't wish to do anything with them. So we could increase the primary IDACI bands E and F, which are the least deprived areas, by an amount to be determined that fits in with the £59,000. simply so those schools who will benefit next year by a closer move towards the National Fair Funding Formula will just enjoy that a little bit earlier. We could increase the primary free school meals factors by an amount to be determined. The problem with that is if we increase the free school meals factors, that provides additional funding for our most deprived schools, who will be taking funding away from next year in any case, because they are already getting more than the NFF says. So that might not be the most helpful one. The alternative is that we could keep the funding in the DSG, add it to the growth fund for 18-19, and it will be there in balances available for future years if needed. I think if you don't wish to make a decision, choose one of those recommendations, we are meeting with Schools Forum on Wednesday, and we could get an indication of their preference, but we would need to bring it back to you for the final decision, and hopefully sooner rather than later. So, should we go through the recommendations there now? So, first of all, we asked you to approve the proposed changes to the mainstream schools revenue funding formula as set out in section 6. So that's secondary National Fair funding formula, and I guess that one wouldn't change. And primary is difficult now to approve because we need to decide what we're going to do with this extra £59,000.
Are we going to take the recommendations one at a time, or Lisa? Would we need to take the recommendations one at a time? Or? Yeah? Okay, so we had a meeting earlier, and I think it's best for the decision to go to Schools Forum next week to be, is it next week?
Wednesday.
Wednesday to be decided. So that would be, is this the first recommendation that it...
The Schools Forum one is now recommendation 2, which I helpfully gave you first, so it's not in order.
Thank you. So that is the proposal for it to go to Schools Forum, and then eventually you'll come back for a full decision. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So that's agreed. Okay. So the next recommendation.
So are you happy to approve the NFF for secondaries, or do you want to do them all together when the whole pro forma comes back?
We'll do them all together when they come back.
Fine.
Yeah.
In that case, we can't do B. But we can do C, which is the school's budget, which is at Appendix 1. Can we do that? Yeah, the ISB won't change it. Overall, the ISB won't change. So where it says primary and secondary, and it comes to the 2018-19 schools budget says 112,273,000.
Yeah.
Overall, that will be the same, but the allocation between the two might change.
Yeah. Okay.
But the rest of it, with the de-delegated and the Central School Services budget, will all remain the same.
Yeah.
If you're happy with that.
Yeah. So happy to approve C. And then the rest are the same, are they?
Yes, the rest should be fine. So the Element 3 top-up rates are as previously in Appendix 5. The carry-forward balances to be used as shown. The 2, 3 and 4-year-olds, no change there either. The growth fund at 342, that one may change. So perhaps if you would like to approve D, E and F.
Yeah, so D, E and F will be approved. We'll come back to G.
Yes. Please note that we have submitted the additional disapplication request, and note the de-delegated unit values, which are Appendix 3.
Yeah, okay. Happy to approve. And I know the information came in so late last week, and you've all been working really hard over this for the Friday and today. So thank you. Just want to place that on record. Thanks for all your hard work, because I know it was very late in the day.
Yes, well, that was entirely due to
changes. Yeah, no, I do appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so that is item 3 then. That has been complete, so now it's item 4, which is the change to the age range for the Willow Centre, and that's over to you, Caroline.
Thank you. So this is a request to undertake the statutory process to extend the age range for the Willows from ages 2 to 5 to ages 2 to 7. The school has 42 full-time places for nursery and reception provision for pupils with special educational needs and disabilities, as well as privately funded daycare for 3-month-old up to 4-year-olds on the site. We're seeing an increase in demand at infant level for special provision in Portsmouth, and also we're particularly facing a demand for Year 1 places for September 2018. The local, the governing body of the school and the head teacher are supportive of the change, which would allow them more flexibility across the nursery and reception age ranges to provide appropriate provision. And under the statutory recommendations for prescribed alterations to a school, we have to undertake a statutory process for which the local authority is the decision maker. The outcome of a consultation would be brought to the March 2018 education decision meeting so that you would be able to see the results of the public consultation, and therefore we recommend that you authorise us to proceed through this representation stage by publishing proposals to change the age range at the Willows Centre for Children, school and nursery.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's it's necessary. We need to proceed with this, so I'm more than happy to authorise for the proposal for it to change from 2 to 7. So thank you for bringing the report to us.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that was very quick. So that brings the meeting to a close. Did you want to have any, something to add, Susie?
It really just is a comment that I know everyone in the room is aware of, but obviously, and obviously the decisions that were made around the high needs stuff and everything are really, they're very sensible, but they're quite short term. I think we'll realise that. It's just really a comment about, which I kind of was indicated about this special educational needs thing growing year on year. I mean, the years that I've been involved in, you know, and being at Schools Forum and everything, that it goes on, and it was the comment that was made about maybe there are other strategies, and this might not be the place, but it's just about recognising that the strategies as the education as a whole obviously feed into the money side of it. So we've been very sort of come up with a short-term solution, and I just really wanted to kind of raise that, and almost like in complementary kind of way, this is part of that, which is about looking at the provision and making it the best that we can in order to deal with what is a really, you know, a growing kind of concern. You know, the increase in education, health plans, etc., etc. So that, just really a comment that when I look at this, I can see that the financial side has been sorted for this year. I'm quite happy with that, but it's not going. Doesn't seem to be going away. I suppose that's the point I want to make.
Yeah, I know, and I mean this has been looked into by Julia Catherine's team, isn't it? So that, and Mike, if you want to have anything.
Well, just to add to what Susie has said, that we, as you know, we've been doing an SEND strategic review, and that was referred to in Bev's paper, and we'll be taking a report on that shortly. So that review completes end of March, and I'll see these issues are being explored in some depth, along with our colleagues in Southampton, of course, because it's a joint review. So we will be reporting on that.
Alison, did you want to add something?
Just to add the comment that there are a number of risks which we need to assess in relation to this, and in particular the paper refers to one of the mitigating strategies on the high needs block being the remodelling of current specialist provision in the city. That depends on investment decisions which haven't been taken yet, and if we are unable to do that remodelling, the risk of the pressure on the high needs block does increase, and I think it's quite important we log that.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments, Susie. So look forward to that paper in March. Thank you. Okay, so that brings today's meeting to an end. Thank you everyone for attending, and that's it. Enjoy the rest of your day.